It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
We're the Insiders. So, Scott, we had referenda, of course, as usual, all across the state. Interested to see your take on that in the recent election and anything else that caught your eye.
Well, I noted the fact that of the top three referendum, the three largest referendum where they were asking for more money to be spent by various school boards on behalf of the schools, two of the three went down. The other one was fairly close. So many other smaller ones passed. But I think that's a sign that we are beginning to hit the breaking point on the property tax question again. We haven't had this sort of thing in the polling since before Act 10. That's the last time it sort of reached this boiling point where people were like, I can't take any more of this. We got to do something. And so I think it will act as a spur to the politicians in Madison to do something. We walked away from the state budget with this huge surplus. And I would be surprised if they just left that there. I'm thinking that it's in their interest to come back and to focus on property tax relief. The Democrats' way of achieving property tax relief is to give more money to the schools and hope that it trickles down to the property taxpayer. I don't know that people are willing to put up with that right now. The polling shows that people, when given the choice, say, don't send more money to the public schools. Put it to lowering my property tax bill directly. And so, the Democrats, like the governor, saying we need more money for special needs education, more money for school aids, and over property tax relief. The Republicans are taking the opposite position. This should really be about driving down property taxes. I think that's where the voters are at this point.
Well, it is interesting, and I think Scott is right, that there's certainly a growing frustration. You see this in the polling from the Marquette poll about over property taxes versus balancing that off against school spending. I think what people want is both, and that's what you're seeing in a lot of these little local referendums. Scott is right that surprisingly, even though more are failing, quite a few still pass. And that's because at the end of the day, it's a hard vote for people, but they want their kids to be well taken care of and their grandkids and their neighbors' kids. And so they want to vote for that. I think the Democrats have the right approach, which is, yes, we will drive property tax relief by providing more state funding. And there is already a cap. Even the 400-year veto provides for a cap on the increase in funding each year, but that the state's going to backfill more of that and take it down. I think the successful candidate for governor or the successful governor next year is going to be the one that actually does both, delivers both property tax relief and more money from the state. And frankly, if the surplus is left, I think whether it's Republicans or Democrats, that will happen next year. But I would argue, of course, from the Democratic perspective, that the problem is that Republicans have starved the schools for so long. Teachers have taken roughly a 15% pay cut since 2010 if you use real dollars, and that's an issue. But let's touch on the other. We talked previously about the election for state Supreme Court. But there's one other election that I'm really interested in Scott's reaction to. The mayor in Waukesha is now a Democrat. Is that true? Is that possible? And this isn't in your district, is it, Scott? What's going on over there? I saw Ozaukee became a blue county. Chris Taylor wins that with 52 or 53% of the vote. Waukesha is down to a 54-46 margin. What's happening over there? Are Democrats invading? What's going on?
It wouldn't be Democrats from Wisconsin invading these districts, these local races. It would be Democrats from around the country. It is impressive. Republicans in the last election cycle, we had people from the national level invest some money in a few local mayor's races, including that one in Wausau, which produced an upset victory for the Republicans there. And then in the most recent elections here for local office, we had a whole bunch of money come in from outside of the state to my local mayor's race, where, I actually met both candidates at my door. They came around and said hi, but I got mail day after day after day after day in that race. Our mayor was reelected by a margin that is now kind of where Brookfield is, which is 54% to 46%, which is real different than when I represented it and would regularly get something in the high 70s. Waukesha has had Democratic mayors before. You may remember the one who walked around with the plastic shoes for a long time and shorts in his office. So we've had mayors from both parties. The city itself leans just slightly Republican, and in this case, Scott Allen, a longtime state representative from the area, got hit with $250,000 worth of advertising from coming from outside the state, and then he went and lost by really 1.8% of the vote, so 400 and some votes. That was the difference in that margin. So I don't think that portends anything great for the fall elections, except that even seats that Republicans hold, and his would be like a lean Republican seat, that will now be a competitive Republican seat in the fall elections. I think you can take that from that.
There's certainly a lot of money out there. I think Scott and I would agree that we could have run a lot of great races if we had had 1/10 of that money available to us. So we'll see you next time, folks.
You've been listening to The Insider with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.